just in regular mundane life, there are so many things that, distract us and disturb us and upset us and cause anxiety. So whenever we're feeling those kinds of unpleasant emotions, we can just chant this Maha Mantra, and immediately it just zoop, it just beams us up to a higher dimension where all those things just melt away. It's like you're caught down there in a crowd and a lot of things are going on, and you just end up way up here on the balcony, where you can kind of just look out and be like, all right, all that stuff's going on, but I'm up here, I'm safe. I'm free from all that, at least for the time being. So, it's a very powerful practice that can elevate our consciousness, elevate our state of mind, and also purify the heart of all the internal things, because it's not only the external things that trouble us, it's often the internal things that trouble us. We struggle with our own, material desires and lamentations, and just, oops, hold on, let me turn this off. I put this on airplane mode. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so sometimes it's our own internal things, our thoughts and feelings about ourselves and others and our place in the world that can really get us down. So the Maha Mantra, it lifts us out of the external troubles, and it also gradually purifies the heart. It purifies the heart and the consciousness of those internal things that also can get us down from time to time. And the more we chant, the more we can experience life on the spiritual platform and taste what it's like to really just be a soul, just be a soul and experience our existence, our factual existence beyond this material body, beyond the material mind, and really live a very blissful life in spiritual consciousness. So I want to talk about this a little bit based on Bhagavad Gita. Are you all familiar with the Bhagavad Gita? No? A little bit? How about you? Wait, I forgot your name. Amanda. You're not. So Bhagavad Gita is, like it says here, it's considered to be the jewel of India's spiritual wisdom. So it's one of the foundational books for Indian spirituality. And the word Gita means song. So the Sanskrit verses are actually, they have a rhythm and they have a meter, and you can sing them. But the original person who sang this song is Bhagavad. Bhagavad in Sanskrit means the Supreme Lord. And that is Krishna. So I'm going to read a little bit here from chapter 12. So if you want, you can flip to that. In my book, probably the page numbers are different. On my book, it's 509. Who's got the small one there? See if you find it there, Gabriel.
Starts on page 475.
Okay, there you go. So this is an interesting section because this chapter opens up with Arjuna. See, Bhagavad Gita is a conversation, actually. It's a dialogue that is sung. Imagine a dialogue that's sung. It's kind of like a musical. Right? It's a dialogue that's sung. And the main singer, the main speaker, is Krishna, Bhagavan, or Bhagavad, the Lord. And it's a conversation between him and this person named Arjuna, who is a devotee who's in a difficult life situation. And so Krishna is trying to help him out of that difficult life situation. And like we were talking about, bring him to a higher level of consciousness so he can get clarity on what he needs to do in his life. He's at a point where he needs to make a major decision and he's not sure how to proceed. So Krishna is trying to give him a spiritual perspective on the reality of his situation so that he can, have the clarity and presence of mind to make the right choice. And so he's basically talking to him all about spiritual life and spiritual consciousness. And so he's explained to him that there are two different kinds of spiritualists. Well, first of all, before we go into two kinds of spiritualists, we can talk about the difference between a materialist and a spiritualist, because that we need to understand, right? And so that we can know, not be confused. So a materialistic person, or say a materialist, is somebody who basically thinks that they are material, right? The mentality is that I am made of matter. I am just this body. This material body is me, and everything that's wrapped up in this body, my thoughts, my feelings, my physical sensations, that's me, right? And that before this body, I didn't exist, and after this body dies, I'm not going to exist. That's it. And so a person who has that conception of life, that identification, then everything that they do is going to be based on that. So if I'm just this body and mind, then my purpose of life is to satisfy my body and mind, right? To eat nice food, to, all the different senses, to just, indulge them and make sure that they're happy without getting sick, know my boundaries, right? In terms of how much I can indulge myself without going overboard and causing distress to myself. But basically trying to just be happy in my skin, right? Whereas a spiritualist understands that my existence is beyond the body, right? That I am a soul, I am the soul within the body. And that, yes, I have this bodily situation and I need to work with my body and I need to take care of my body, but I existed before this body, right? I'm an eternal being, which means eternal in the future and eternal in the past also, that I have always existed. Never was a time when I didn't exist. And so before my birth in this body, I existed in some other situation, in some previous body, previous lifetime, maybe many previous lifetimes, maybe even I lived in different, planets or universes, who knows, right? But I existed somewhere, somehow. And now I'm in this body and I'm dealing with a certain set of parameters that this body and psychology has brought to me. But there are particular lessons that I have to learn. And that's why I took birth in this body. I took birth in a particular country in a particular family, because that's all been arranged for me to learn certain lessons. So this is an educational experience in this lifetime. And if I learn properly, if I pass the tests, then when I leave this body at the time of death, then I'll go on to a higher destination. Just like if you're in school, you learn the lessons, you pass the final exam, you go to the higher grade. Right? So we're trying to make sure that we learn what we're supposed to learn in this lifetime and go to a higher. Our next birth is an elevated birth, right? Or ultimately that we can get out of this, what we call the cycle of repeated birth and death in the material world, and attain what's called liberation, spiritual liberation, that the soul doesn't have to take on another body, but can enter the spiritual domain and live a spiritual life in their eternal spiritual form with other spiritual beings, and not have to be born again and die again and go through this temporary changes of the body. Okay, so leading up to this chapter 12, Krishna has explained that there are two different kinds of spiritualists. So out of all the spiritualists who understand that we're not the body, who understand that I'm just temporarily placed within a body, but I'm an eternal spiritual being, there are two types. And one is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. So the impersonalist is one that understands that, okay, I'm a spirit soul, and I am a tiny little spark of the complete whole, or the absolute truth. Right? The absolute truth is that spiritual substance from which everything has emanated, right? That all the energies have emanated and that all souls have emanated. And the impersonalist meditates on that all-pervasive absolute truth, or you could say divine energy, like that, and with the goal of becoming one with the divine energy, becoming one or merging with the absolute truth, and attaining a state of, nirvana, or like that. That you just merge with spiritual perfection and you give up your material existence, and you exist in spiritual existence, but in an impersonal form. You don't have a form, you don't have qualities, you don't have a personality. You're just merged with the light, merged with the divine energy. So that's impersonalism. And then personalism is that you also understand that, okay, I'm just a little spiritual spark here. And that there is also an absolute truth, which is the source of all spiritual sparks and spiritual energies and even material energies, the source of everything. But that the absolute truth is a person. The absolute truth is a person, and that person is God, right? So the personalists have more of obviously a personal conception of God, that God has a form, right? He exists with a form, a personal form, with a head and two arms and two legs, and like a body. It's like the Bible also says that humans were made in the image of God. So the idea that God has a human-like form, and that not only does he have a form, but he also has qualities. He has a personality, right? With his personal qualities, his personal characteristics, his likes and dislikes, and that he has names. Like we were just chanting, that the mantra that we were just chanting, the Hare Krishna mantra, is composed of names of God. So Krishna is a name of God, which means all attractive. Because if God has a form, then his form must be very beautiful, must be all attractive. Because even in this world, anybody who has the power to do so will try to make their body more beautiful, right? They'll invest in all kinds of treatments and plastic surgeries and makeovers and cosmetics and hairstyles, right? To try to be beautiful, fashions and all kinds of things. Everyone wants to be beautiful. But because we're limited, and we have karma, we're limited by our karma, then we can only make ourselves so beautiful, right? But God's unlimited. He has all power. So he can make himself as beautiful, unlimitedly beautiful. So that's what he does. So he has a spiritual form, and that form is beautiful. And so he's called Krishna, which means all attractive. And not just that his appearance is beautiful, but his qualities are beautiful. He's loving, he's forgiving, he's compassionate, he's grateful. He has all these wonderful personal qualities. And he also has activities. He has his transcendental pastimes. So he's not inactive. He's not just sitting there doing nothing, but he's actually very active. He's playful, and he has loving relationships with his associates, and he also has a loving relationship with each one of us souls, if we care to establish that relationship with him or reestablish that relationship with him, then we can do that. So Krishna describes these different types of spiritualists or transcendentalists: the impersonalist and the personalist. And so Arjuna, he's thinking about it, and he's asking a question, because Arjuna has become, over the course of this conversation, Arjuna has become very interested in spiritual life and perfecting his spiritual life, and he's thinking that life is short, and I want to do the best possible thing. So you described these two different ways of approaching the absolute truth. So now he's going to ask, which one is better, according to you? So that's what he's asking here. He says, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? So that impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested, that's, the divine energy form of the absolute truth. And they worship that divine energy by meditation, by just kind of meditating on spiritual existence in a general sense. And then the personalists, they engage in devotional service. So, because if there's a person that you want to have a relationship with, then the best way to establish a relationship is to do something for them, right? Just like we want to get to know someone and form a relationship, so we'll do things together. We'll bring them some gift. We'll, cook something nice for them, bring them cookies or whatever, try to warm up to them somehow through service, or just do some little favor for them or whatever. So the way to approach the absolute truth in the personal form is through service, through devotional service. So he's asking, which is better? Those who are doing devotional service for the personal form, or those who are meditating on the impersonal form? And so the next verse, text 2, we have Krishna's answer. And he says, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. So he's very clear about his answer that, yeah, that those who worship the personal form, they're better. It's not that the other ones are bad, they're all good, because anybody who's practicing spiritual life is actually a rare soul in this world, right? As you probably experience, because you're all spiritual, you're seeking some kind of spiritual experience. And most people aren't really, right? You have the experience that most people that talk to you, they're kind of like, all right, that's cool, but what's for dinner, right? So, yeah, they're interested in other things. So it's rare and special, and Krishna very much appreciates anybody who's on a spiritual path. But of the two, he says that the ones who worship the absolute truth as a person are better. But then he says, but those who fully worship the unmanifest, so that's the impersonal, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. So he's saying that even the impersonalists, and he gives a little bit of a hint here as to what else, apart from meditation, the impersonalists do. They control their senses, and they also are equally disposed to everyone, because they see that everyone is a spiritual being, and they don't have conceptions of that this nationality of people is better, or that this race is better, or that this, people who are materially more intelligent are better, or that people who are more wealthy are better, or that one gender is better, or whatever. They just see everybody equally, or even that one species is better. They just see that every living being is a soul, and everyone's equal on the spiritual platform. So that's a spiritual vision. So they have that. And he's saying that this is all a good thing, and Krishna appreciates that. And he says that in the end, the impersonalists all end up becoming personalists eventually. It may take some lifetimes, but they all come to the personal understanding in the end, because it's the ultimate. It's the only relation or the only experience of the absolute truth that fully satisfies the soul. Because what we're really looking for is not just a spiritual understanding or a spiritual experience, but we're looking for love and loving relationships. Pure love that's not, where there's no tinge of selfishness, no tinge of exploitation. And so that pure love is available in its ultimate form with the Supreme Person, who is totally pure, who doesn't need anything from us, doesn't want anything from us except our love. Right? He has no reason to exploit us, because he has everything. He controls everything. He owns everything. He has all the power, all the wealth. He doesn't need anything from us. He just wants to have a loving relationship with us. So when we experience that loving relationship with the Supreme Absolute Truth, with Krishna, then that fully satisfies the soul. Okay? So now he says, so he's saying that, okay, the impersonalists, they're also eventually going to achieve him, or achieve the personal understanding. But he says in text 5 that for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So that's all of us. We're embodied, embodied souls within a body. So he's again saying that, the impersonalism is okay, but it's difficult. It's troublesome. And now there are a couple of reasons why it's troublesome. One is that it's very difficult for an embodied soul to relate to, because we are persons. So as persons, it's difficult to relate to something that is just absolutely impersonal, right? It's hard to really connect with that deeply. We can meditate on it for some time, but how long can you go on just absorbing yourself in something that has no shape, no form, no qualities, doesn't seem to do anything. It just gets boring after a while, right? It's just not really going anywhere. So that's one reason why it's difficult. And another reason why it's difficult is Krishna, he explains in the next couple verses. So in text 6 to 7, he says, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, that's Arjuna, for them, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So this is a reason why personalism is easier, is because Krishna helps the person who worships him. Whereas those who just go for worship the impersonal absolute truth, because you're not dealing with a person, then you don't have a person to help you. You know, you're kind of on your own with that. Whereas if we approach Krishna as a person, then we get that personal assistance, right? And he gives the example here of how souls in this material world are like, sometimes he calls this situation of repeated birth and death in the material world the ocean of material existence. He says it's like we're on an ocean. We're just like in the middle of the ocean, that we've fallen into the water, fallen into this material world, and the waves are, thrashing us here and there, and we're going sometimes under and sometimes up, and there's, scary creatures down there, sharks and, stingrays and things or whatever. And it's difficult. And to cross that ocean on our own strength is also very difficult. Like, how are we going to swim across the ocean? We don't have the strength for that. It's just too much. So we need help. So then if some rescue boat comes along and they throw, a buoy down to us that's attached to a rope, and they're like, hold on, I'm going to reel you up, cranking it up, then we can be delivered. So the impersonalist is there in the ocean, is here in the ocean of material existence, but just kind of on their own trying to stay afloat and survive, which is difficult. Whereas the devotee or the personalist, specifically, it's written in the purport here. This is a really sweet thing here in this purport. It says that, it says the responsibility of saving the soul is taken by the Supreme Lord himself. He clearly states here that he himself becomes the deliverer. A child is completely cared for by his parents, and thus his position is secure. Similarly, a devotee does not need to endeavor to transfer himself by yoga practice to other planets. Rather, the Supreme Lord, by his great mercy, comes at once, riding on his bird carrier Garuda, and at once delivers the devotee from material existence. Yeah, here's what I was talking about. Although a man who has fallen in the ocean may struggle very hard and may be very expert at swimming, he cannot save himself. But if someone comes and picks him up from the water, he is easily rescued. Similarly, the Lord picks up the devotee from this material existence. One simply has to practice the easy process of Krishna consciousness and fully engage himself in devotional service. So, yeah. So that's a little comparison of the different paths of spiritual life, impersonalism and personalism. And we've heard it straight from the mouth of the Supreme Personality, which one he thinks is better, and with a little explanation of why. Because it's easier, because you get full support from the person, from the Supreme Person. And the other one is troublesome. And since anyways, he says, anyways, the impersonalists are ultimately going to become personalists, you may as well just go straight to being a personalist, and just worship God as a person. It's so much more relatable, and you've got all the help there from the Lord himself. So, this is a very important point here from Bhagavad Gita, that we're being encouraged in that direction. And I know that a lot of people who practice spirituality, there's a lot of books out there, and actually most of them lead us towards impersonalism, right? Most spiritual literatures out there lead us towards impersonalism. So it's very common that people all over the world, whether in the Western world, in India, even some of the scriptures from the Vedic tradition also have that tendency to lead people towards impersonalism, which is difficult. And then people get despondent in spiritual life because they feel like, where am I going with this? What is even happening? And they feel kind of like they come to a point where they feel like they're kind of stagnating, and then they just go back to material life, because they're like, okay, I feel like I can actually at least make progress here. I can get a job and earn money and get a promotion and get married and have kids and do, like at least make progress materially if I can't make it spiritually. But the personal path, the progress that you make is so quick that it's like, wow, this is amazing, and very quickly you get an actual taste, where you're actually relishing and experiencing transcendental enjoyment in spiritual life by worshiping Krishna, or in a personal form of the Lord. So that's kind of what I wanted to introduce as some food for thought based on Bhagavad Gita. And I'd like to just open it up for discussion. Any reflections on this topic? Or, maybe you'd like to share something about your own spiritual journeys, if something's relevant to this, or anything at all. Questions? Yeah. Okay.
I've got definitely something in this area. Just a couple of months ago, before going to Muskegon. So a couple of months ago, I say like 3-4 months ago, probably at this point, I was just, every now and then, I just randomly open the Gita and read out a verse and just kind of read the purport to it and just think about it. I came literally across that verse, I think, verse 5 in this chapter, and then...
From chapter 12?
Yep.
That I just read?
I think it was that one that I opened up on, and
Uh-huh.
it was... I read this, and I was like, interesting. That I feel like that is something I have been doing, and it's not been as fulfilling as literally these last 3-4 months of singing kirtan and coming here and reading the Gita and like learning more about like being a personalist, basically, without me really having known at that time the words for it. And so I read that, and literally a couple hours later talked to Mong Sham here on the car ride to come here. We talked about that, and he was telling me about that as well, and it was very like relieving for me. I felt like a big stress just kind of leave my body as I acknowledged like, oh, I've been kind of climbing up this really hard hill that does have a destination and it is possible, but I'm taking the hard way to get there.
Yeah.
And that I've already now begun the easy route, basically, where someone comes and just picks me up and takes me up there. And so that was like a huge relief to just be like, okay, I'm just not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to enjoy this ride up to the top. Krishna coming in on a big old bird to fly me up there. I'm like, yeah, please, let's do that. I don't want to walk up the mountain all on my own. That's going to be so boring and long and hard. So that was my personal. And then since then, I felt so much less stress about my own spiritual path, and it's been easier to like acknowledge and engage in devotional service because I'm not like trying to like go through like the mental path, basically.
Yeah.
So that was me.
Great.
That was just a couple months ago this year.
Wow, you just confirmed everything that Krishna just said.
Yep, absolutely. Literally, when I read the rest of the chapter and everything, and I was like, wow, like I've been making it hard on myself, and I recognized that I was making it hard on myself. And so I was very happy. It was a turning point for you. Yeah, big turning point for me, absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, that's a big step, big milestone.
So I'm wondering, if this is the easy way, why are there only a few of us here? Why are there so many other spiritual groups that have so many people following? Why is it just a handful doing the easy way?
Yeah. Because everyone has their different conceptions of spiritual life. For example, like yoga. The actual purpose of yoga, the literal meaning of the word yoga means to link up. It means to connect. Right? So the ultimate linking that we need, that yoga is meant to fulfill, is the linking of this individual soul, that's us, to the supreme soul, which is God or Krishna. But why do most people go to yoga?
Health.
Right? The physical exercises, to improve their figure, lose some weight, be healthy, be flexible, be fit. Right? It's all about the body. And they just want to improve their state of the body, which is okay, but that's just the beginning. That's basically just like a side benefit of yoga. The real thing of yoga is to gradually, connect with Krishna. So the purpose of the exercises and the stretches and the sitting postures is just so that the body can be in a state of balance and health, so that we can actually sit down and meditate, right? Because if we're not healthy and we're stiff and we're feeling pain all over our body and things, then you can't concentrate. The body becomes a distraction. So first of all, health needs to be there. So there's yoga, there's Ayurveda, the diet that helps to balance the energies of the body, things like that. So that's not the end in itself. That's just the first step, right? The first step is, okay, get your body healthy, and then you can sit down and actually meditate on the Lord. And then, so there's and then pranayama, the breathing exercises. People like the pranayama breathing exercises, but that's also to make the mind peaceful, right? Because there's a connection between the life airs and the pranas, as we call them, and the mind. So when the pranas are all balanced and aligned nicely within the body, then the mind becomes peaceful. So first of all, body peaceful. That's through the yoga asanas. And then pranayama makes the mind peaceful. And then the next step is pratyahara. Means, I'm just going through Ashtanga yoga here. It means pratyahara means withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. So that means like controlling the senses, not overindulging. And then so there's yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. Then comes dharana. Dharana means meditation, that we can actually hold our mind. We can fix the mind on one thing without being distracted, because we're not distracted by the body, we're not distracted by the mind, we're not distracted by the senses pulling us here and there. Now we can actually just like fix our minds in concentration. And dharana literally means hold. Dhar means hold, right? Like giridhari means hold the hill. So it means to hold your mind on one thing without being all over. And so what are we meant to hold our mind? What are we meant to fix our mind on? The Supreme Person, right? To meditate on the Lord. And Krishna mentions this, right? He says that those who, in text 2, he says, those who fix their minds on my personal form. And then he says again later in text 6 and 7, he says, always meditating on me, having fixed their minds on me. So we're meant to fix our minds on Krishna, on the supreme, beautiful, transcendental form of the Lord, meditate on his qualities, his activities, and our relationship with him, ultimately. And then dharana, so that's the 6th stage of Ashtanga Yoga, and then from that comes dhyan, which means sustained meditation, and then samadhi means trance. You basically become absorbed in what we call Krishna consciousness. But the amazing thing about Krishna consciousness is that it's not just to sit down in one place and meditate, for hours and hours, but it's an active process. Bhakti yoga means devotional service, right? We were talking about devotional service. So in Krishna consciousness, it's doing activities for the pleasure of the Lord. So many activities. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
What's your name?
Don.
Don. All right. We're having a little spiritual discussion here based on Bhagavad Gita. Do you want to join us?
Sorry I'm late.
That's okay. Better late than never. So, yeah.
Yes,
So,
Casey.
you want to sit on the sofa over there? Any more comfortable for you?
Sorry to interrupt. That's fine.
Yeah. So the cool thing about Bhakti is that so many activities can be performed in Krishna consciousness. So practically like everything that you do in life, you can do in Krishna consciousness. So we don't have to, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we don't have to stop doing things that we normally do. At least most of the things we don't have to stop. Maybe a few things we need to gradually decrease. But for the most part, right, we need to eat. And so we cook. And so we can cook a nice vegetarian meal and offer it to the Lord, offer it to Krishna, because he's a transcendental person. And, he may not appear there with a spoon and fork and start, eating, our salad or our quinoa or our, soup or whatever. But because his form is transcendental, he can eat just by seeing it or just by knowing that you're offering it, because he's omniscient. He knows that, you cook this meal with love for him and that you're offering it as an act of devotion, a devotional offering for him. And then he, hears those prayers and he accepts it. So then our cooking, we cook every day, right? But when we can change our cooking into an act of devotion, into an act of bhakti yoga, by connecting it to God, by offering our food to God. And then afterwards, by the process of offering, it becomes spiritualized. So what was ordinary material food becomes spiritualized. And then when we eat that it's spiritualized, it's purified. So any karma, any karmic things that went into the food, like, for example, if the vegetables and grains weren't sourced 100% ethically or something, then we don't get inculcated into the karma of the unethical whatever, if it wasn't exactly fair trade, or the workers weren't treated properly, or it wasn't 100%, like organic cultivation or whatever, you know what I mean? It was kind of like there was some little, karmic things involved in the production of the food. But when we offer it, it gets purified of all of those karmic influences. And so we have a karma-free diet. And so, yeah, and then just by eating, we're making spiritual advancement. So everything just becomes very wonderful, when our just ordinary activities of our daily lives are done as offerings in devotion to the Lord. So that's just one example of practically unlimited, practices or activities in serving the Supreme Person. Yeah. So we don't have to just sit down and meditate under a tree for the rest of our life. We can, cooking becomes a meditation, right? That, even going to our jobs, working in our careers, it can be a meditation that I'm working as an offering. I'm doing this duty for you, Lord, and the money that I'm earning from this work, I'm going to also use in your service. We like to sing, so we can sing the names of the Lord. We can sing the Mahamantra or songs in glorification of the Lord. We like to socialize, so we can get together and discuss Bhagavad Gita and share our experiences and do so many things. Okay. I don't know. Did I answer your question? I think I went way off the track. Okay. So, all right. So I was getting there. So the reason that there are not many people sitting here is that most people are just, they want a spiritual experience that just kind of makes them feel good. It just makes their bodies and minds feel good without really having a serious connection with God, right? So a lot of people who claim to be spiritual, if you say the G word, it's almost a bad word for them, right? But how can you be spiritual without, acknowledging at least the existence of the supreme spiritual being whom we all came from, So that's why. And the reason that people don't like God is because they see him as a person that's just imposing so many rules on your life, right? And who's punishing you for all the things that you're doing wrong. So, we don't like this idea of, a God that's punishing us, that's watching us, that's judging us, that we have to be afraid of all the time, that's, sitting there with a lightning bolt in his hand, just waiting for us to mess up so he can, smash us into the ground, send us down to hell, eternal damnation. And it's like, who wants to be friends with someone like that, right? just forget about that person. It's like, get out of here, right? So that's why, but actually, people need to know about Krishna, because actually God is not like that, and, Krishna is, like I said, he's very loving, he's very playful, he's forgiving, he's tolerant. He would never, ever send somebody to eternal damnation. It's actually not a thing. No, there is no eternal damnation. We always get another chance. If somebody's been really super evil and super cruel and, abusive and horrible to other people, they may have to go to a hellish situation. And there are hellish planets in the universe where, people like that need to go through a certain experience to understand like what they've done wrong and that they need to change their ways.
Compassion.
Sorry?
To gain compassion for others.
Exactly, to understand, to kind of like feel the pain that they've caused in others' lives, right? Like, how does it feel, to be suffering the way you made everybody else suffer? But that also is temporary. It's kind of like a jail sentence, where they serve their term, and it's like, okay, you did your time, and now you can, go back and rejoin the community, reintegrate, right? So yeah,
you said planets,
yeah, there are planets,
like within.
the universe.
Okay, so these people who exist on this planet, are they experiencing these planets alongside of us, or?
I mean, there are planets. Yeah, it's actually very interesting, in the one of our scriptures. So this is Bhagavad Gita. This is the beginning book that we read, that coming from the Vedic tradition.
They have that.
Oh, good. And there's another one, which is kind of like the next level. So when you finish this, then you can start the next one, which is a long, multi-volume literature. It's called the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there are 12 cantos, 12 like big books. And the fifth canto describes the structure of the universe, the structure of the whole material universe, and all the different planetary systems and the different conditions of life on each planetary system, and how actually there is life on all the planets, and all the planetary systems. And so and different planets have different standards of living, I guess you say, different conditions, right? So there are planets where people who have really bad karma because they've done really bad things, they go there and they have a miserable life. Yeah, they have a hellish life. But it's purposeful, it's purposeful. It's meant to reform them. And then there are higher planets. So those are the lower planets lower than Earth. The Earth, the planet that we're on right now, is a middle of the road here. We're like middle range planet where, there are beautiful things and wonderful things, and there are also, difficult things and challenging things. So it's a balance, right? And it's actually the perfect balance, because life here is pleasant enough that we can relax and think about who we are. We can actually reflect on, what we're doing here and think about our purpose and, who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? Why is there suffering? But there's enough suffering that we don't become just intoxicated in enjoyment. We don't just become like just carried away with eating, drinking, and being merry. Sometimes the little troubles of life are good because they bring us to reality. Like, okay, it's not all good here. I need to try to figure out like what I'm doing wrong here and how I can improve things. So the sufferings are good because they give us they give us a little gravity. They give us some seriousness to reflect on life, right? It's like when someone dies, someone we love passes away. Those are the times where we become very, very deeply thoughtful, and we start reflecting on just the nature of birth and death and my life and my own mortality, the fact that I'm also going to die, and where am I going to go, and what am I doing here to make my destination better, right? They make us serious. So
I
that.
remember reading about that years ago when I was studying some other Eastern spiritualism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the thing that I didn't really connect with or understand. Oh, are we,
For our online
we're
listeners.
online. Hello. So I guess I didn't understand that. That's why I asked about the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are
'Cause-
higher planets also.
Yeah, like reading about Buddhism and these things that are happening on this plane right now, and paying karmic debt, like here
Hmm.
in this realm, alongside somebody who may not be paying karmic debt for similar things. That for some reason that made sense to me,
Hmm.
but I remember trying to wrap my head around these planetary levels, and I guess I'm curious to hear more about that, like how you feel that exists.
Yeah. So basically, it's which planet we go to depends on there's a verse that says karmana daiva netrena, which means that the type of body that we get and the planet that we're born on, it depends on our karma, like you said, on our activities, and also and it all happens under the supervision of the Lord. That's the daiva netrena. Daiva netrena means that the Lord is seeing. So he sees our karma, and he makes the arrangements that we go to the place that we deserve according to our karma. So that means if we've lived a very good life, a pure life, we've tried to cultivate spiritual understanding, we've worshipped the Lord in some form, some bona fide form. We've tried to do good for others. We've been responsible in our duties, like that. Then we accrue all kinds of good karma. Right? Let's say we volunteer for, charitable works, or organizations that help others. We're active in our community in ways that help others. Even volunteer fire department, anything like that gets us good karma, right? And so if we have accrue plenty of good karma, then when we leave this body at the time of death, then the soul gets elevated to a higher planet within the material universe, right? So higher planets, they're the live a long life. Everybody's very beautiful. The environment is just like paradise, and relationships are good. Everything goes smoothly. There's no wars. There's no poverty. There's no famine, or diseases or natural disasters. Life is just kind of like nice, really nice, and you live a long life. But even on the higher planets, the thing is that even on the higher planets, it's still temporary. Because as long as we're in the material universe, it's a temporary situation. Everything material is temporary. So whatever kind of material body we have, we're just in it for a certain span of time, and then we have to die. We have to leave that body. So whether we have a beautiful body in the higher planets, in which we can enjoy life in a very beautiful, wonderful place, or whether we have like a lower form of life on a lower planet where we suffer a lot of miseries, or whether we have a mediocre body on Earth, which gives us pleasures and also gives us pains, it's temporary, and we just have to. After a while, we burn up. See, what happens is we generate good karma on Earth, and then we go to the higher planets, and then we basically like use up our karmic bank account, right? It's just like you save your money and you go on vacation, and then you're spending, and then when the money's done, you have to come home, back to work again, right? Back to work. So we work here, we get good karma, we go to the higher planets, spend our karma. When it's all spent out, then back to Earth, right? Or the same thing, if we do, horrendous activities here, then we get bad karma. Then we go to a lower planet, suffer. We eliminate our bad karma by suffering, and then when the suffering's done, it's like the bad karma bank account goes dry. Then okay, back to Earth. What are you going to do now? So it's really on this planet that we live on, the Earth, is called Karmastan, the place of karma. This is like the place where we're determining our future. Basically, this is the place where we really are shaping our destiny for the next life. But because you see, even if you go to the higher planets, you have to come down, and the lower planets you come back up. So it's kind of like a roller coaster. You're going sometimes up, sometimes down, Sometimes here, sometimes there, sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes black, sometimes white, sometimes an animal, sometimes a plant, sometimes a human, right? It's like, but we're still in the material world. We're still in this cycle of repeated birth and death. And even in the higher planets, it's not absolutely perfect. There's still some, anxiety. So the goal is to get off this roller coaster, I always tell this story of when I was a little kid. I went with my friend to the fair, and there was this big roller coaster right there. So I was small. I was maybe like 8 years old or 9 years old or something. And my friend was a year older, and plus she was taller. So she was like, let's go on this roller coaster. And at the fair, they have this little like wooden figure there, and they say that if you're this high, at least this high, then you can go on. So I get up there, and I'm like standing on my tippy toes. And the guy that was operating the machine wasn't paying much attention. He's just like, all right, on you go. So I got in, but I was just like this little, I was like super skinny as a kid. So we get on this Ferris wheel, and we're thinking, all right, we're going to have a great time. This is going to be thrilling. This is going to be fun. And so it had the safety bar that you pull, and it goes lock, 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 and you pull it till it's right up against yourself, and then it locks. So once it gets up against you, then, it doesn't go back until the guy releases it. So the idea is it's supposed to hold you in your place so you don't fall out of your seat. Because what I didn't realize about this roller coaster is that it doesn't just go like this, but the little cars, they were like cars with a roof on them, like a cage, kind of cage roof. They also spin around like this. So you're going up and you're going like this, like you're going upside down, like that. So problem was my friend was bigger than me, and I was a little too small for that ride. And the safety thing went like right snug against her, but there was like, that much space between me and the bar. So when we started spinning, I slipped out of my seat because we were upside down. And then the thing's spinning, and I'm getting like thrashed around in this car. And every time it goes to the bottom, I was like, stop, let me out. But the guy was so spaced out, these carnival guys, they're just like not the most intelligent people on the planet. Anyways, so I went around a few times like that. By the time I got up, I was just like, that was a nightmare. Anyways, so I always think of that whenever we're talking about the cycle of repeated birth and death in the material world, because it's like you're going around and around, and you're thinking that it's going to be, fun. You're thinking you're going to get some thrills in this world, but it always ends up that we just kind of get bashed around a lot. Yeah. So the thing is, we need to get off the Ferris wheel. We need to get off the Ferris wheel. And so how to get out of the cycle of repeated birth and death? That's by practicing bhakti yoga. Because the material world, the material universe is one thing, right? And it's got its different planets, and it can go up and down, but we're still in the material world. But there's a whole different realm, which is beyond the material world, which is the spiritual world, where you don't have to die, where you're just spiritual beings. And the very interesting thing is that, while the soul's in the body, it's kind of packed up. It's packed up in the body. And we can understand that, the soul is within the body because the body is alive, because we're conscious and we're active, right? As soon as the soul leaves the body, then the body is just dead, and there's nothing you can do to that body to make it alive again, right? And the only thing that could ever make it alive again is if the soul would go back in, right? Like some people have out-of-body experiences where the body seems like practically clinically dead, but somehow the soul comes back and then they spring to life again, like that. But yeah. So death happens when the soul leaves the body. I lost my train of thought there.
Getting off
So-
the Ferris wheel.
Getting off the
Practicing
Ferris wheel. Yeah, practicing bhakti. So practicing bhakti, right. So while the soul is packed up in the body, we can't see what it is. We can't see really who we are. We just know by the symptoms of life, by the symptoms of consciousness that, okay, I'm alive, the soul is here. The soul must be present, right? But when we become totally spiritually realized, we realize that not only does God have a beautiful transcendental spiritual form, but so do we. We also have a beautiful spiritual form. And so when we are totally pure in our devotional relationship with the Lord, with Krishna, then we can actually go back to the spiritual world where our spiritual form, eternal spiritual form, manifests. And in that spiritual form, we have a relationship with the Supreme Person in his spiritual form. Just like, I mean, similar to the way that we have relationships with each other here and now, right? We're people and we can talk to each other, we interact with each other, can have relationships with each other. So in the spiritual world, there are also people, but they're people in their eternal spiritual forms, right? Right now we're stuck in these temporary material forms, but there's a whole other world where everybody is just having eternal spiritual relationships in their personal forms, serving the Lord together, and they're loving relationships, and yeah, that's where we're meant to be. Like right now, we're kind of like fish out of water here, right? Because we're spiritual beings, but we are not in the spirit. But we're in the material world, so that's why it's so problematic for us here. But when we as spiritual beings get back to the spiritual world, then it's like put the fish back in the water. Whoosh! Now I can swim. Now I can breathe. Now I can live my life. So that's the idea, that we need to get back home where we belong. Yeah. What do you think, Delilah?
I can relate to that. I have had near-death experiences about 4 times in my life. Yeah.
That's pretty epic.
Yeah. So I can relate to the disembodied spirit that you can become, and the peace that comes with that. I cannot tell you why I came back the 3 times. And especially not the first time, but the last time was, and I just realized this very recently, was actually to have the human experience.
To have
the human experience. Like there are things that you can't feel without this vehicle, right? So like the feeling of going underwater and swimming in that freedom that you feel is something that you wouldn't feel here on Earth without the vehicle.
Right.
So it's relatable.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So in the material, as long as we're in the material world, we need to have a material body in order to experience material life. Right. Otherwise, we're just kind of like ghosts floating around, frustrated, and trying to get in someone else's material body so that we can, experience life through their senses. But in the spiritual world, it's different because we have spiritual bodies, so we can experience everything to the fullest extent in our spiritual bodies in the spiritual world.
And the knowledge and understanding that you have on that plane of existence versus here, when you come back, it doesn't always come with you,
Yeah.
So you leave that behind and you're like, wait a minute, I'm missing something here. There's a knowledge I'm missing on this plane.
Yeah, that's such a good, like realization you had from the experience. Because as soon as the soul gets in the material body, we become conditioned by
society.
Everything that pertains to the body, right? It's like all of a sudden, oh, okay, I thought I was an eternal, spiritual, blissful soul, and now I'm just a middle-aged American woman.
Bummer, dude.
and people expect me to behave in certain ways and dress in certain ways and speak in certain ways, and I got to kind of do that, otherwise I'm going to be considered a nut. Right? So we're bound by all these like things according to our cultural conditioning that's related to the body. But as souls, we're completely free. We have absolute freedom.
I feel like that's really important. That unbecoming. The last 4 years.
Wow, that's been flies.
The last 4 years on my spiritual journey, I have really taken away those barriers, and I've lost friends. I've changed my whole, I mean, I haven't changed, but my whole view has changed. Everything within me has changed. I woke up. I woke up. And so the last 4 years of this journey has been unbecoming all of those entanglements of the world, right? All these things that we're told we have to be and how we have to behave.
Yeah.
Yes, I might look a little off, and I actually have shoes on today. I rarely have my shoes on. I need to be grounded. I need to be connected. So all of these things has brought me to where I am. And even though I've had terrible experiences on this earth, everything has led me to where I am right now. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I love growing, and I want to be to that next level as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a nice insight that you had, that, you know, even though we go through difficulties in life and we might go through some really terrible traumas, but in retrospect, you know, when we come to, especially when we come to a state of higher spiritual awareness and we look back on our lives, we see that everything that happened was ultimately beneficial, right? Like if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here now. And so we can be grateful even for the crises and traumas and things.
I now believe too that there's no coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's divine path, and I
For
do
sure
feel that and see that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the more we get the desire to realize our spiritual selves, the more it becomes clear, you know, that there's a divine being who is literally moving us, you know, and making arrangements, putting us in circumstances to come to the next level, to realize the next thing, to, you know, achieve the next milestone in spiritual understanding.
And I've been very blessed to start to meet those people, to meet like-minded people when before I wouldn't have, you know. So I feel like my energy draws people to me, which I think is wonderful.
Yes. Great. Thank you for sharing.
We talked about that previously, about the synchronicities of life. Right. The synchronicities of life that happen and catch your attention along the way. And it's true. Like when people don't resonate with you, they kind of fall away when you don't resonate back with them.
Yeah.
But then when you make the space for that, because you're no longer occupying yourself with something that isn't for you, then your other people gravitate towards you.
That's right.
So
yeah, I think you wanted to say something, right? All this time, you've been very patient.
You said when the suffering is over. That struck me. Someone who's on this earth right now and who's suffering from disease their whole life, or depression their whole life, and realizes that it's all part of the lesson. I'm sorry.
Okay.
right here.
This
I knew I was
is
going to do this.
this is a safe space. Go ahead. We're happy to hear your reflection.
And realizing it's all part of a lesson that needs to be learned. Do you think it's this person's choice, or is it karma, just pure karma? Or did this person choose to come here and experience its depression or disease? Is it a choice? Is it karma? And how does it end?
Yeah, it's usually a little bit of both, right? Because ultimately, even the karma that we have is a result of previous choices that we made. And then when we experience our karma through different, life circumstances that come our way, for better or for worse, then we also have a choice, again, how to respond to that, right? So it's really all about choices. And then, of course, we choose something, there are consequences. And that's karma brings us our consequences, but we can also choose how to respond to the consequences. So we're constantly making choices. So really, ultimately everything is something that we've chosen, but we may sometimes make choices not knowing what the consequences will be, right? So nobody in their right mind is going to choose to suffer. But we may choose to do something which we don't really think about the ramifications of, right? So, yeah. But when somebody does make a bad choice and is getting the consequences for that bad choice in the form of whatever kind of suffering they have to go through, then that suffering is not pointless. It's not purposeless. It's actually purposeful, right? It's meant to teach us lessons. So whenever we're suffering, a really good habit is to be like, okay, just reflect on it very deeply and be like, okay, I'm suffering now. What am I supposed to learn from this, right? What is the lesson? And often, and it's when we learn the lesson that we can move on, right? And sometimes we just stay running away from suffering or trying to mask our suffering, right? Trying to drown our sorrows with intoxication or escape through, drugs or just, immersion in media or something, like watching movies and just like all these different escape mechanisms that society gives us nowadays so that we avoid learning the lessons of life. So that's why it's good to be sober, to have a sober view of reality and really be very introspective. And, when we're going through suffering, just pray, what am I supposed to learn? I understand that there is a supreme controller. There's a supreme being who's controlling everything. And that supreme being is also my best friend, is doing everything for my good, ultimately. Right? It's just like parents. Sometimes parents punish the children. And the child's in their room, they're crying, they're having a tantrum, they're suffering like anything, right? But the parents, they don't want the child to suffer. But they have to put them in a position where they're suffering so that they learn how to do things properly, right? So they learn how to behave properly, basically. So basically, like, God is the Almighty Father, right? That if we do something wrong, He has to, ground us or, send us to bed without supper or whatever, whatever parents do to punish their kids these days. Um, yeah, and we don't like it, but we're meant to learn that, okay, I won't do those things again. I'm going to try to live a clean life, live a good life. Yeah. So when we learn those lessons, then we don't need to suffer anymore, right? It's just like when the kid, he's in his room crying, and like my mother used to send me to my room, and she'd say, you can come out when you have adjusted your attitude. So that wouldn't happen immediately. The first thing I would do is go to my room and be very angry, right? I would just want to just like throw things and whatever, And then maybe after an hour or so, I'd be like, all right, this is silly. They're having a good time out there. I can hear them talking and laughing, and I'm sitting in my room miserable, just feeling all these negative emotions. Why don't I just change my attitude? And then when you come to that conclusion, you find that it's actually totally within my power to change my attitude. Like at any moment, I can just not be angry. I can not be, vengeful or whatever. And I can just be like, fine, It's like, all right, zoop, attitude makeover, open the door, take the humble position, and have to deal with like mom saying, so, be like, yep, I'm good. I'll do whatever you want, like that. So, yeah, we have to come out of whatever attitude is that caused us to make the wrong choices, which brought about our suffering, and present ourselves to the Lord with a new attitude. Like, I'm good and I'm willing to do what you want me to do. And then it's like, thank you, lesson learned. Welcome back to a happy life.
Thank you.
I just wanted to offer something also. I grew up in a house and had my own depression problems. Grew up with a bipolar father, mother who had borderline personality disorder. Fortunately, I wasn't raised religious at all, completely secular. But I had a lot of friends who were religious, and they would say things like, "Okay, well, this is God's will and these sorts of things. And at some point, and I actually got my father to consider diet and meditation for his bipolar. And I do think, you know, you can frame things good and evil. You can frame food evil and good. My dad was eating like shit. It's like processed stuff, and like I'm like, this is evil. You know, this is bad. So we got a lot of his bipolar depression under control, just changing diet and eating better. And I actually got him to start meditating, and it was amazing. Like the change, like over the course of 3 or 4 months. Yeah. But these things are, I guess, practical, practical things that really worked.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's really good. Actually, right here in this book, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the science of eating. And he says, just like you said, that there are some foods that are evil. So Krishna says that there are foods that are in what we call the 3 different modes or 3 qualities of material nature, which are goodness, passion, and ignorance. So he says there are foods that are in ignorance. They have the quality of ignorance. And those are foods that are products of violence, right? Like meat is a product of violence. Foods that are like fermented, like alcohol. Foods that are old and stale and, you know, beginning to decompose, you know, like leftovers that have been in the fridge for a bit too long. And so when we eat, you know, like, you know, meat, or we take alcohol, or just food that's not good, then those, because the foods have the quality of ignorance, then we eat them, then it just fosters ignorance in our consciousness. And it causes us to act in ignorant ways, right? And make wrong choices, like we were talking about. And then the next level up is foods with the quality of passion. So foods that are this mood of passion are foods that are, you know, very spicy, very bitter, very like dry. You know, those like potato chips or something, you know, that are like dry, that you eat them and they just kind of like suck all the water out of your mouth and make your lips hurt after a while because of I got a permanent one. Yeah. What else? So too salty, yeah, dry, too salty, too spicy, too bitter, too sour, just like too much anything, right? Just like overly intense foods, like that, and that those. They cause passion in the body. They cause us to have very strong material desires and to become very ambitious, and, you know, the senses to become very strong, the urges of the senses to push us in ways that's very difficult to control and moderate. So that's the effect of the mode of passion. And then foods that are in the mode of goodness are wholesome, they're healthy, they increase the duration of life, they're juicy, they're sweet, but not like refined sugar sweet, but, you know, like healthy sweet, like, you know, fruits and, you know, like that, those kinds of foods. And they give us a sense of goodness. They bring goodness to our lives, and, you know, they put the body and mind in a state of goodness. And the quality of that mode of goodness in our lives is that it brings happiness, and it also brings illumination. It gives clarity. So in the mode of ignorance, a person just doesn't know what to do, what not to do, and they end up doing the wrong thing. In the mode of passion, they end up just going for material goals and becoming frustrated. But in the mode of goodness, you see that there's clarity that, oh, I'm actually a spiritual person. I have material aspects of my life that I need to take care of responsibly, but my main priority should be spiritual life. And we also get the clarity for how to, you know, engage spiritually in the world. We can see like which kind of friends are, you know, supportive of the lifestyle that we've chosen, and which people are dragging us down, and, It's just we start making all the right choices for a happy life due to eating foods that are in the mode of goodness. So like you said, it's a practical thing, very practical thing. There's a lot in this book that's like extremely practical, like that. So yeah, diet makes a huge difference. And then when we go to the next step of taking those foods with the quality of goodness, and so those are like vegetarian foods, whole grains, fresh fruits, vegetables, dairy products that are produced, ethically. Then, and we make, prepare meals out of that and offer it to Krishna, offer it to the Lord. Then it goes beyond goodness and it becomes transcendental. It becomes completely spiritual, and that food does more than just give us clarity, but actually like purifies the heart and soul. Yeah. So this is the science of eating, the spiritual science of eating. Oh yeah, speaking of food, Monk Sham has brought some spiritual food